Welcome back, everyone. We are First Seed Sports, Dante, Kyle, Mike, and Zach, and this is our second week of starts and sits. It was an exciting week one, a lot of fun fantasy action. We saw some receivers pop off. We saw some running backs go down, some guys pop up. It was a lot of interesting stuff going on. So without further ado, we're going to get right into the video. We each selected a start for the week. We each selected a sit for the week. It was a lot easier this week. With some background to go off of and not just having to throw darts in the off season. But so without further ado, Kyle, go ahead, get us started with your start of the week.
I'm going to start right off with tight end Dallas Goedert out of Philadelphia. They faced the LA Rams this week, and I've got high hopes for him. One stat was crazy to me. Since the Eagles' Week 10 bye of last season, Zach Ertz has 68 targets and 120 PPR points, while Dallas Goedert has 66 targets and 126 PPR points. So they are neck and neck, and quite honestly, they are essentially the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 of this offense. And this past week, Goedert went off, and sure, it was against the Washington football team. But he's taken over that receiving core. I think if I'm starting Ertz, I'm starting Goedert, and I will begin to rank them 1-2 or right next to each other nowadays. What do you guys think?
I would agree with you. A lot of talks about Zach Ertz and his contract negotiations and how they're not going so well. It's a little concerning. And then Zach Ertz comes into the game with Goedert on Sunday, and Goedert, I believe, had more targets, more receptions. So it's a little scary for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. It just looked like Ertz kind of fell out of favor. He wasn't the guy that Wentz wanted to go to, and that seems like it's become Goedert. And if there was one thing I saw with watching basically that whole game on Sunday, it was that Rager is a speedster, and Deshaun Jackson, we already know, is a speedster. So on the outside, they're going to take the top off the defense, which is going to leave that soft middle wide open. And it's going to leave Goedert, who's a mismatch, one-on-one with linebackers and guys who just can't keep up with him. So I think that bodes really well for his fantasy value. So, Dante, you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to say, I also think that teams just kind of focus on Ertz because they know that that's one of Wentz's favorite targets. So teams tend to, construct either a double team or someone at least spying on Ertz at all times. So that leaves just an extra room for Goedert to, go at the pace that he goes at. So I would say Goddard's the right choice.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement on Goedert. All right, cool. Good pick, Kyle. Mike, let's move on to you. What do you got?
All right, so my start for the week this week, I have Emmanuel Sanders and Jared Cook. Now, I picked both of them. Obviously, if you guys have been following, Michael Thomas went down with a high ankle sprain this week. I'm guessing from having the injury before, it's going to take at least 1 to 3 weeks for him to be back to 100%, if that. Cook had 7 targets last Sunday, and Sanders pulled in had 5 targets. So I expect both of those numbers to go up against a pretty weak Raiders team who gave up 30 points to the Carolina Panthers last week. So,
Kyle, I'll let you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think really Jared Cook dominates without Michael Thomas in that on the receiving end of Breeze's passes, because last year he was that touchdown monster. But this year, if you add those touchdowns with the targets and receptions that he can now have, rather than have Michael Thomas just take everything away, I think Cook could smash, and obviously Sanders is going to benefit from this too. He's a very capable receiver.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was just me, but in the early going of that game, it seemed like everyone was probably watching that game because they were playing Brady and they were playing the high hopes Bucks. But in the beginning part of that game, it felt like Breeze was just checking the ball down to Cook all the time. And then later in that game, we saw Sanders did come down with a touchdown with Michael Thomas playing. So I think honestly, without Michael Thomas, without that massive target hog, both of these guys could see a huge uptick this week. So I'd like to start for this week. Dante, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, simply put, the Michael Thomas injury definitely impacts, every receiver that is in that offense just because Drew Brees can't have that automatic check down that he usually has. So I would say it's an open book in terms of all their receivers because, Brees he's not going to be able to just throw to Michael Thomas,
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Mike, so I love those two starts and sits. I love those two starts in Emmanuel Sanders and Jared Cook. All right, I will take the next one. And my pick for the week is Amari Cooper. Mike, I'm singing your praises here. I'm finally picking a Cowboy. I don't feel clean about it. I don't feel good about it, but I can't ignore the facts. Amari Cooper is going up against the Atlanta Falcons this week, and last week the Falcons gave up the second most passing yards. Russell Wilson absolutely tore them a new one in all aspects of the passing game, and DK Metcalf, who essentially plays the same role as Amari Cooper, just in a different offense, had I think he finished with 19.7 PPR points, which is a fantastic week. That's nothing to turn your nose up at. So I think that just the weak Atlanta secondary paired with a pretty good passing offense that we saw from the Cowboys in week one. Amari Cooper actually caught 10 targets against Jalen Ramsey, which is a pretty remarkable feat to complete, Ramsey being a top 5 corner in the league. So I think that against a weak secondary and with the week one success, I'm looking for a huge week from Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I think week one answered that question that everybody had which was if and how much of the targets CeeDee Lamb was going to capture from Amari Cooper. But realistically, Amari Cooper is still Dak's favorite guy. With 14 targets, that was by far the highest targets on the team. He's the guy, and he's going to continue to be the guy. And I think all the fears that we had of CD taking over those targets from him, I think they're pretty much gone, at least for now.
Right. And as you guys know, Homer here, Dallas Cowboy fan for life. But throughout the game, I really noticed one thing. Like Kyle and Zach both said, Amari Cooper was the main guy in the offense. The only thing that I would look for from here on out is Kellen Moore was calling the plays on Sunday. And from what I'm reading from some of the Cowboys sideline reporters and analysts, they're all stating that at any game now, Mike McCarthy could take over that offense and start calling the stuff that he wants to. So whenever that happens, if it happens at all this year, it'll be something, again, you're going to have to give it a game or two to see what direction that offense is going. But like Zach said, as long as Kellen Moore is calling the plays, I love Amari Cooper, especially at home this week.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just think the fact that the Seahawks kind of torched the Hawks before, the Falcons before, just kind of gives that a right way because, they don't really have anyone that is even on Amari Cooper's level on that team. Like DK Metcalf he's a rising star, but he's nowhere near Amari Cooper. So I think that alone should give him a lot of options. And I think also it could be a dogfight. So that just means even more time with Dak and Amari, and that passing could really explode this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those are a lot of good points. Okay, and Dante, you are the last person up here for your start of the week. Who you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Nyheim Hines, running back for the Colts. Last week he had a great game, 8 catches as a running back, which is phenomenal. He had 7 carries as a running back too. What was 8 catches for? It's like 38 yards or something like that. He had a rushing and a catching touchdown. I think you can tell that Philip Rivers is using the running backs. It's not really the Chargers offense that he was adjusting to. It was the fact that Philip Rivers throws his backs a lot, and Nyheim Hines is starting to become that Austin Eckler of that offense. Jonathan Taylor is definitely going to get his touches, don't get me wrong, but I think in terms of PPR leagues and half PPR leagues, they're going to have those catches with Nyheim Hines. He's going to be involved in that passing offense a lot more. So he's definitely a must start for me.
Yeah, if I have Hines on my team, I'm throwing him in my flex spot. Maybe even my RB2 if I'm desperate for that position. But those catches in the PPR league, you gotta love him, especially with Rivers back there. He loves those receiving backs.
Yeah, I'll go off of that. To be honest, I don't think that I'm leaving Hines out of my starting lineup. As long as he's healthy this year, I see no reason for him to be on anybody's bench for the remainder of the season. And I'll go out on a limb here. I could say confidently that I think that Nyheim Hines will be a top 15 running back in PPR formats for the rest of the season. I'm getting flashes of Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler and Phillip Rivers. He's doing his thing. So I'm really high on Hines this week. I think that was a good start, Dante.
Yeah, the situation really just kind of fell into place. It's a complete parallel from what Phillip Rivers was dealing with over in formerly San Diego. You can liken Jonathan Taylor to Melvin Gordon, and you can kind of compare Austin Eckler to Nyheim Hines. And I think that, much like you guys said, Rivers loves to dump the ball off to his running backs, and behind that offensive line, it's a match made in heaven. And not only that, paired with the fact that the Colts are taking on the Minnesota Vikings this week. Last week, the Vikings allowed just Aaron Jones, who's not even the number one pass catching back on that team. They allowed him 4 receptions on 6 targets. So that's like I said, he's not even the top pass catching option, and they were having so much success throwing the ball down the field. I don't even think that they were utilizing their running backs to the full extent. So I really do like Nyheim Hines to have a huge week. Great pick, Dante. All right, so from here, let's pivot. Let's go ahead and start focusing on the negatives. Let's talk about our sits for the week. And Kyle, it looks like you're going to start us off here. Who do you have?
I'm benching Devontae Parker. And I did the same last week, but this week it's a little bit more so after having seen what they did with him last week. So Parker's battling a hamstring injury, which isn't great for a guy who kind of needs to move around to play his position. But even if he does play, I don't see him being much of a factor against this Bills defense. And with those 4 targets for 4 catches last week, I don't think he is being leaned on heavily in this offense, not yet at least. But I would much rather play Preston Williams if I were forced to. I think he performs a little bit better this week, but realistically, I don't think I want to play either of them until probably Tua starts.
Yeah, I'm always skeptical with any wide receiver that's dealing with a hamstring injury. It just doesn't have a good history there. So Kyle nailed it on the head. I wouldn't play Devontae Parker if I had other options in week 2.
Yeah, for me, it's really the hamstring injury that sticks out. I wasn't so lucky, Kyle. I did play him last week in a couple leagues, and he finished with 8 points, which really doesn't leave me too awfully sour. It is what it is at 8 points. He got me something at least. It wasn't a 0. But that hamstring injury does scare me. I was really hoping he could return last week, but that wasn't the case. It's not necessarily the Buffalo defense that scares me. Last year, he was able to put up 16 in week 7 against Buffalo, and then 20 points in week 11 against Buffalo. So he's seen some pretty good success against Buffalo, but that hamstring, that is a terrible injury for receivers, especially who rely pretty heavily on getting down the field and getting open. So I'm with you. I'm sitting Devontae Parker this week.
Yeah, you guys kind of hit it on the head in terms of all the reasons, but I agree, Kyle. Yeah, I would say that Devontae, just injury alone, it's not worth it.
All right, so great pick there, Kyle. Okay, let's move on to Mike. Mike, who is your sit of the week?
Okay, so I'm kind of going in the same direction Kyle is with wide receivers that are injured, and my sit of the week is Courtland Sutton. So Courtland Sutton, he suffered an AC joint sprain, which sits right up here on the top of the shoulder, and I've had the injury before. Obviously, I'm not comparing mine to Courtland Sutton, but one thing that I did notice is that head coach Fangio did say that in order for Sutton to play in week 1, all he had to do was 10 jumping jacks, and that was not possible for Courtland Sutton to do, and he ended up sitting out. So it's a very painful injury. It's very hard to get your arms up in the air with that injury. Even if he does tough it out and play, he's playing a good Steelers defense this week. I'd expect Jerry Jeudy to get more production in the slot, especially with these blitz packages that the Steelers love to send. So Cortland Sutton is going to be my sit of the week for those reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough break. Again, it's just injury based and a tough defense. That's just two combinations you don't want to have. I'm with you. I am probably not touching Sutton this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just hop on the train. I'm not really gonna contradict anything here. I agree. I'm going to be sitting Sutton this week if I own him anywhere. But I am going to go ahead and say that I think he is a solid trade target. I do think his season does turn around as it goes on, and now is going to be the time to capitalize on, his value being down a little bit because he's not playing. He's dealing with some injuries. If you can flip a running back who might just be hot right now for Cortland Sutton, flip one of those lower end running backs. That by all means, I think that's the move. But I do agree. I think he is a sit this week.
Yeah, not much to add. AC joint injury. Mike described how bad it was.
Yeah, it stinks being the fourth guy. It's hard to come up with new stuff, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I will say this just to be different. I'm so in on Jerry Jeudy. I think he's gonna get a massive, like, if I didn't have Nyheim Hines, I would have Jerry Jeudy as another start, just because of the amount of touches and targets he might be able to get now that Cortland Sutton's not available. So
yeah, that is a bold call. But I like it. I think he seems to be the most pro ready out of those rookies right now. So okay, let's move on. I will go ahead. I'll give you guys my sit for the week. My sit is going to be Cooper Kupp. Week one, I guess I must have really been paying attention to that Sunday night game with picking a Cowboy and a Ram, but Cooper Kupp is my sit because in week one, he only finished with 40 yards. He finished with 4 catches for 40 yards. So he was good for 8 fantasy points. And that's just not the production you were hoping for when you drafted Cooper Kupp. He was a top 12 receiver last year. He's a wide receiver 1 last year, and he's just not giving you that production so far. So that paired with the fact that the Rams actually play the Eagles this week, and the Eagles limited Washington slot receiver Steven Sims to only 4 catches for 40 yards also. So it's kind of, I mean, that laid out pretty nicely for me. And Sims actually played 83% of the snaps, and they held him to just 8 points. So that paired with the fact that Kupp doesn't even see he sees the field about the same amount. He sees the field 85% of the time. I think that it's a pretty easy parallel to draw between the two, and I just don't think that it's going to work out for Cooper Kupp this week. So he is my sit for the week.
Zach, I disagree. I blame Sims's better production, or I guess lack of production against this Eagles defense. Just kind of being the Washington football team's offense. I think that is just, I think to compare Kupp to Sims in completely different offenses isn't enough to say to bench Kupp. Sure, Kupp finished with only 4 catches for 40 yards, but that's still 5 targets on a very oftentimes productive offense. So I believe Kupp could play very well. I think he could very much find himself on my starting lineups this week.
All right, well, I gotta pick a side of the fence here, but I'm actually going with Zach. I'm not liking Cooper Kupp. Not that I think that he will have another bad day, but I just don't think his production is going to be at what we're expecting. For my main reason is I look at Washington's defense and what they were able to do against Philadelphia last week. And what they did is really shut down the run. Everybody was so high on Boston Scott, breakout week, and he ended up not doing that much on the ground. So I think the Rams are going to see that. I think McVay is going to come out in his double tight, and I think he's going to run the ball until they stop it. And I don't know if Washington football team is going to be able to stop it. So as long as they're in that 12 personnel, Cooper Kupp gets taken out of his slot, taken out of his element, and I don't think that he's a good play for this week.
Dante, what do you got?
I'm going to agree with Kyle. I think Cooper Kupp is the right guy to start. I think when it comes to it, Cooper Kupp gets the bulk of the attention from Jared Goff. That's what it is. He gets a lot of the targets some games, and you know the Eagles, yeah, they have a good slot defense, but I just feel like when it comes to Sims, like Kyle said, with that offense being completely different, I think Cooper Cup is utilized a bit differently, and I think that if Jared Goff and him establish that connection early, it could be a big night for Cooper Cup. So I'm actually going to go the opposite. I think you could expect a big night from Cooper Cup.
Okay, fair enough. It's always good to have some disagreement. It's the spark of debating. So okay, and last but not least, we have Dante with his sit of the week. Who you got, Dante?
So my sit is another Ram. Actually, it's Cam Akers. Now Cam Akers did have some good activity. He just didn't make the best out of it. He had was it 13 carries for 39 yards. So it was not. While Malcolm Brown, the opposite guy, he kind of established himself as the starting running back. He had about like 19 carries for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns, I believe. So he completely outshined Akers in that in terms of that competition. But Akers still did get the touches, which is why some people might look to start him because they haven't fully announced who the starting back was. But at this point, I think Malcolm Brown's about to run away with it.
I think we're going to see a bit of what we did see last year, where why am I blinking on his name? Malcolm Brown took over those end zone touches over Todd Gurley last year, week 1, and kind of disappeared. But I see Brown being that end zone guy, but not like he was this week. So yeah, I agree, Dante, with Akers sitting. I really don't want to touch any of them right now until they get that one guy that they're going to work with. I think it was just a product of Brown was good that one time in the end zone, so they stuck with him for the next time. And then, yeah, I'm not starting any of them.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't want any shares of any Rams running back right now. If anything, maybe Malcolm Brown is a maybe RB3/flex. But the thing that concerns me is in the beginning of the game, I think the split between Akers and Brown was actually pretty even. I think that they did split the ball pretty evenly. And once they found that Malcolm Brown was the one that had the hot hand, he looked successful. They went with him for the night. But I wouldn't be surprised to see McVay try to sneak in a Cam Akers night and just let Cam Akers go free. He's going to get his touches. He's going to have a breakout week. I think it depends on when. So it could be this week against a banged up Eagles defense, or it could be in a few weeks. But like Kyle said, I don't want any of them until I see anything.
Kyle, something you said really resonated with me, and that was the just tendency for the Rams to go to Malcolm Brown on the goal line. And that was something that I think we saw a little bit in the week 1 game. And likewise, I think that was something that we saw with Washington actually in their game as well. They tended to go to Peyton Barber down on the goal line, and they shied away from the rookie Antonio Gibson. Kind of pretty similar. Again, we're drawing a parallel like we did with the Colts before, but I think that the Rams and the Washington football team kind of have some similarities in that they both have a rookie who's young and exciting and provides that spark. But when it comes down to the goal line, it comes down to business, they're going to go to their bruiser. And that's Malcolm Brown, and that's blanking on his name now. Peyton Barber for Washington. So I do like to pick Dante. I think that going away from Cam Akers this week is the right move, because I think if we're going to see any rushing success against an Eagles defense that only allowed 80 rushing yards last week, I think it's going to be on the goal line, and that's going to be to Malcolm Brown. So I agree. I'm with you on fading Cam Akers this week. So, okay, and that brings us to the end of our selections. Those were our 4 starts. Those were our 4 sits this week. So I'm going to open the floor. We have any last things that we want to say?
I'm excited for week 2.
Yeah, I think we can all say that.
I play Kyle twice this week in 2 different leagues. So, and I believe that I have Courtland Sutton in one of them. so he'll be on my bench for sure. But good luck, Kyle, and
Oh yeah, you
that's
too.
it for me.
Yeah, it's always. I think it was refreshing last week to be able to sit on our couch for 10 straight hours and do nothing but watch 16 football games all day. So, it's a thing of beauty. So, looking forward to this Sunday. Looking forward to tomorrow night's game. Actually, I think tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, we have the Bengals and the Browns. Does that sound correct? Okay, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to my boy Nick Chubb eating, seeing Joe Burrow build off of Week 1. So that's all we got, guys. So thanks for tuning in again. For Kyle, Mike, and Dante, I'm Zach, and enjoy the football.